Make sure that's done. All right, welcome to today's Rowdy.com Big Three. Sitting here with Kenny Bruce from SceneDaily.com. I'm Buzz Cutler, of course. And Kenny, we got back from Richmond.
Yep.
Juan Pablo Montoya, Ryan Newman gave us something to talk about, thank God, because there's no other news to talk about this week. But here's the way I look at Juan Pablo over the past few years. 2009, it seemed like he got the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of points racing might be necessary to get the chase. Last year he got behind early, had a rough start to the season, started to push, missed the chase. Now here he is. He's in the top 10, but decides to take Ryan Newman out at Richmond, drops out of the top 10, out of that guaranteed chase spot. Has Juan Pablo Montoya forgotten the lessons he learned in 2009?
No, I mean, I think Juan learned, like you said, he knows that it's all about points racing. Up to a point. It's like, if you can get in there, then you don't want to do anything, to jeopardize where you're at. But, these guys don't think of those things when they're behind the wheel for 3.5, 4 hours, and they get frustrated. Juan had an extremely fast car. He won the pole, led the first 25 laps up there, I believe. I don't think Ryan intentionally got into him to start the whole situation. But, you don't know that if you're the other driver, and I know there was some talk about, well, Ryan asked his spotter to talk to Juan's spotter and try to make sure everything was cool. And there was, you got the impression that maybe things weren't cool at that point. But, I don't think Juan's really forgotten. I just think he got caught up in the heat of the moment. I
have to wonder sometimes, is the mark of a potential champion a guy who doesn't get caught up in the heat of the moment?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at, obviously Jimmy Johnson won the last 5 championships. Those guys, anything that's been thrown at them the past 5 years, they've just kind of gathered themselves back in and said, it's okay, we can overcome this. They don't go flying off the handle when something goes wrong. And that's kind of, we're seeing that's kind of the knock against guys like Ryan, Juan Pablo, Kyle Busch to a lesser extent, maybe not, getting furious at other people on the racetrack, even though he's retaliated, on occasion. He's been known to do that. But you've got to keep the big picture in mind.
Yeah,
and I think that's one thing these guys learn.
And it seems like maybe Kyle Busch is starting to get that this year. It seems like maybe he's learned that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's easier to remember those things and to keep a calm head when everything around you is not falling apart.
Right, when you're winning races.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to issue number 2.
Okay.
Jeff Gordon seems to have a knack for finding where the safer walls aren't on the racetrack. Las Vegas a couple of seasons ago, Richmond this past Saturday. You also think about Elliott Sadler at Pocono last year. We don't have safer barriers in these interior retaining walls at all these tracks. And Kyle Busch said it's a financial issue. Is NASCAR being penny wise and dollar foolish in this regard?
Well, I mean, it's not cheap to put up safer barriers. I mean, they found that out when they first started looking at them. So what they did was they went in and said, okay, where are the danger zones on these tracks? And, where are the guys making the most speed? Where are they most likely to have one of the impacts that could injure somebody or do something even worse? And that's what they focused on at that point. There are areas at any track, and it's always been my contention that every inch should have safer barrier around a racetrack. I never understood why that wasn't the case. And, I said that a couple of years ago when Gordon had his incident. I said it earlier this year, coming into this year. We applaud NASCAR for all the safety innovations they've done, but they can't just sit back and think, okay, from the safer barrier standpoint, we're good to go, because you never know where one of these accidents is going to unfold. And unfortunately for Jeff Gordon, the places he's had accidents have been the places that haven't had the safer barriers.
Yeah, so with the exception of maybe some places on road courses, do you think it's time for every inch of retaining wall at every oval track to have a safer barrier?
I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't have. I mean, maybe the percentages are really low that anybody's ever going to impact a wall, at a track, say like Darlington where they're going this week. I don't know if it's, if it has inside, outside safer barriers all around it or not. But, the chances are somebody's going to get collected and hit a place where there's not a safer barrier. I mean, we've seen it too many times.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to issue number 3. David Ragan. a guy we thought might be on the chopping block coming into this season. This was going to be a do-or-die year for him. A lot of people were saying, well, Trevor Bayne will be in that 6 car before the season is out. David Ragan has laid down some nice finishes. Was the top finishing Roush Fenway driver at Richmond this past weekend. Is his job safe, you think?
Yeah, not too many people pointed that out, by the way, that he was the top finishing Roush Fenway guy.
Well, Carl Edwards pointed it out.
Yeah, you know, I think David, you know, he's had, 3 top 10s in his last 4 races. People thought, like you said, Trevor Bayne was going to be in the car. Now Trevor Bayne, we don't even know if he'll be back with the Wood brothers anytime soon. I mean, everybody's assuming he will be, but we don't know if that's going to be the case or not. David Ragan has all of a sudden, he started qualifying better, and they've started getting better results at the end of the race, which is really, you know, I mean, he started off the year, you know, had the situation at Daytona when he could have won that race. And then he had a couple of bad races, and people thought, well, you know, they're going to be looking to get rid of this guy. But that, you know, that's not necessarily the case. The guy's a good driver, but, you know, you've got to have breaks, you know, just like anybody else. I mean, a couple of bad breaks can make you look like a bad driver, can make your team look like a bad team. A couple of good races can make you look like a great team.
Yeah, and of course, while he's not in a contract year this year, he is in an option year. Yeah. UPS, his sponsor, is in a contract year.
Yeah, and you know that Jack Roush and the whole Roush Fenway group want to keep that sponsorship in-house. I mean, that's one of the premier sponsorships out there. It's a well-known entity, so I'm sure they'll do whatever they can to keep it. You know, if it meant you had to make a driver change, then Jack would certainly consider that. But I'm sure going forward, he would like to keep David Ragan and UPS tied together.
Yeah, and you know UPS is tired of seeing FedEx get all that TV time in Victory Lane, so that's got to be part of it as well. All right, Kenny Bruce from SceneDaily.com. Thanks for joining us today, sir.
Glad to do it, sir.
All right, we'll have you on more often. We have too much Pockrass.
I know.
Too much Pockrass is not a good thing.
Too much Bob.
All right, thanks, man.
Sure.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.